I'd like to thank Birch Living for sponsoring this video. Are you bored of making the same block over and over again? Are you tired of tiny blocks where nothing lines up? Does it ever feel like it takes forever to make a quilt? Well, what if your quilt was just one big block? No, I mean a really, really big block. Well, stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. Hi, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please click that subscribe button. When I started making commission quilts, my first question is always, what is your budget? Which then I had to translate into a quilt that was both striking, modern, but most importantly, it paid me adequately for my time. And that is when I started making one block quilts. Big blocks have many advantages. Some of them are pretty obvious. Because they are big, there's less pieces in your quilt, which translates into less cutting and less sewing, which also means it takes less time to make it. Now, quilting is not a race, but sometimes you just don't have the mental capacity for a full marathon. Making big block quilts is more like running a 5K. Another advantage of big block quilts is they have a lot of impact, and that large scale can give your quilt a modern vibe. Now, big blocks also have some disadvantages. Depending on the size and shape of the pieces in the quilt, you might need more fabric, and big pieces can stretch a lot if you're not paying attention. And if you have ever experienced wavy borders, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we need to carefully feed the fabric equally through those feed dogs. It's also harder to sew long straight lines. If you thought sewing straight seams with a charm block was hard, try sewing a perfectly straight seam for 15 to 30 inches. And since you have fewer seams, mistakes can be harder to hide. So not only do you need to be accurate in your seams, you need to be accurate in your cutting. And lastly, cutting and piecing at a large scale can be awkward if you don't have the space, which means you'll need to find another space to cut accurately, like a boardroom or a dining room table. Now, my solution to these issues was to use the freezer paper piecing technique to make the block. Now, I showed you how to paper piece in this video here, and I showed you how to do it with freezer paper in this video here. It helps stop your pieces from stretching. When you cut out your pieces, you don't need to be super accurate. And the folds in the freezer paper give you a long line to follow to keep those seams straight. Unfortunately, it doesn't make your space any bigger. Most of you will already have a paper piece pattern or two. You can easily upside it when you use the scale feature when you print. Let me show you. So here is the free evergreen pattern from my video and class about paper piecing. After you open the file, click Ctrl-P to print. You want to click on the current page, then choose Poster Layout, then the scale. 200% will double the size, 300% will triple the size, and 400% will quadruple the size, and so on. Now watch this square in the printing dialog. It will indicate how many pages you need to print. Note that the size here is how big the papers will be when laid out, not your pattern. Now, alternatively, if you are able to draft the pattern yourself in Illustrator or some other graphic program, you can size up the pattern first. That's what I did with this Mariner's Compass block. So I upsized it to 30 inches for a queen size bed. It needs to be saved as a PDF. When you go to print, keep the scale at 100% as it is already the correct size. And I do like to change the overlap to 1/4 of an inch. Grab your upsized pattern stack of papers. Lay out in order of all the papers to ensure that nothing is missing. By printing with 1/4 of an inch overlap, your paper will have these reference markings. Trim to this line on the left side of the paper and the bottom side, So when you piece your pattern together, it's easy to align the sheets and tack down. Then starting with the bottom row, tape down the sheets as you align the lines and shapes on the pattern. I am taping the paper with clear tape. When the paper pattern is all assembled, take your ruler and inspect all the straight lines. Despite your best effort, some of the lines will not match up, and that is not a problem. Simply take your ruler and draw a straight line between the two endpoints, and then mark the outside edges in blue. And the lines where my section pieces will connect, I highlight in orange. Now grab your freezer paper. For this size project, you'll find the 18-inch wide paper easier to work with. Lay a length of freezer paper along the longest section line. So grab a beanbag or some spools or old pennies or anything heavy that you can use to keep it flat. With a ruler and a fine pencil or pen, transfer lines to the freezer paper. It's important that your marking is right against the side of the ruler. Also copy the assembly numbers. Repeat for all sections. When you're done, reassemble all your pattern sections to ensure that they fit properly. Make reference marks across the section lines where the blocks are sewn together, so later it will be easier to align them. I know many of you are sending your young adults off to university or college shortly, and many will need a mattress. Birch Living is a mattress in a box company that makes mattresses that are fiberglass free and crafted with sustainably sourced organic and natural materials. It comes rolled up in a box and it's straightforward to set it up yourself. Their non-toxic mattresses are made right here in North America, crafted with 8 different layers of organic cashmere, organic wool, organic cotton, and 100% natural latex. Their mattresses have over 1,000 individually wrapped steel coils to cradle your body and limit motion transfer. And these wool in the mattresses also make it hyperallergenic, both with allergens and mildew. We have had our mattress for over 2 years, and I'm amazed at how well I sleep every night. So much that I've replaced all the mattresses in my home with them, plus I gifted one to my parents and to my sister. Birch mattresses are Green Guard Gold certified. This means that the mattresses are independently verified to be organic, ethically produced from beginning to end, and free from any polyurethane-based foams and pollutants. I know that ordering online can be nerve-wracking. So with Birch, you get a 100-night sleep trial, as well as a 25-year warranty. Delivery is free to your door within the US, and they now offer setup and removal to make your buying experience as convenient as possible. With every order, you'll also receive 2 Eco-Rest pillows made from recycled plastic bottles. They're breathable and better for the environment. I love my Birch mattress, and I think that you will too. If you're looking for a new mattress, check out Birch Living. Their Labor Day sale is live now, so it's the perfect time to upgrade your sleep and get 25% off your Birch mattress plus 2 free Eco-Rest pillows. Visit birchliving.com/quilts to find out more about this limited time offer. When you sew big, you also have to take a look at the prints in your fabrics. Where do you need the darkest values? Where do you need the lightest values? And where do you need contrast? In these compass points, I want the darkest in the front and the lightest in the back. And I need the same color twice, but with 2 different patterns. Do any of my choices have directional elements? And how should I line them for maximum impact? I make it a habit before I cut just to lay all the fabrics out in just roughly their final size and shape. And I arrange them like the block just to confirm that my choices are playing nicely together. Now that we've cut all our freezer paper, don't think that this photocopy paper is going to go to waste. We are going to cut it up and use it as templates for our fabric. You can use a rotary cutter and ruler or just scissors, but just follow the lines and cut out the various pieces. The template pieces are already marked with the order of assembly, and then we did that blue marker on the outside edge. But there's two other things that you might consider marking. You might consider saying the wrong side of fabric is facing up, because it's always confusing in paper piecing, and the other one is you might indicate what fabric each template is. These template pieces are big, and they can get underfoot and damaged. So put them aside, organize them by fabric so they're there when you need them. Press all your fabrics so that they're flat and free of creases. I like to start with my biggest pieces and work towards my smallest. I double check to make sure my fabric is facing the right way, which means the wrong side is facing up, and I cut with a generous 3/8 of an inch to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And any piece that has a blue line on it, I want it running parallel to the grain of fabric, so I keep my stretching of the edge of my block to a minimum. I cut 4 pieces of each since I need 4 blocks to make the Mariner's Star. It's amazing how the pattern pieces twirl and flip when you're not looking. And if you cut your fabric wrong, you might not have enough to make it right. So I do one more quick check to 1, make sure that I have 4 of every piece, 2, that I've cut them all in the right orientation, and 3, I still like the layout. Assembly is fairly straightforward, as it is with regular size foundation paper pieces. You start with piece 1 and press it to the freezer paper in the center of the designated spot, ensuring that you have at least a 1/4 inch allowance over the edges. Fold the paper back on the line between piece number 1 and 2 and trim at a 1/4 inch. To make it fast and easy, you can use this add a 1/4 ruler. Place piece number 2 along this edge. Right sides of the fabric should be together. Sew a seam along the fold. Using a really good ironing technique, set the seam. Flip the fabric over, then finger press. Then press the seam with a hot iron as well as the rest of the block to the freezer paper. Flip the section over and press the freezer paper to the fabrics right to the outer points. Repeat with piece number 3. Fold the paper back on the line, trim at a 1/4 inch. Align piece 3 with piece 1. Sew seam along the fold, then press, ensuring all corners are attached to the freezer paper. Now with piece number 4, it's exactly the same. When matching sections together, trim the edges to a 1/4 inch on both sections. Then align the edges, matching points of intersection, our reference marks, plus the beginning and end points. Use clips and pins to keep it all in place. Then sew the sections together. As you sew each piece together, your work is getting bigger, heavier, and the freezer paper is getting slipperier. So wear a quilting glove on your less dominant hand. For me, that's my left. You'll be amazed at how much easier it is to handle your work. And when you've completed your sections, keep them out of the way so that they don't get damaged. When your block is complete, trim all edges at a 1/4 inch. Then gently remove the papers. Don't worry if you have nicked your seam on your freezer paper while you sewed. Just gently remove it and it's still good to go. For the Mariner's Star, you're going to need 4 of these blocks to make the big block. So continue to make blocks number 2, 3, and 4. Now as you use your freezer paper over and over, it becomes less sticky. I really had no problem using it the first 4 times, but I've recently reused these freezer papers for another quilt. And I could really see the difference in stickiness on blocks number 7 and 8. So as you grow your blocks, be sure that you give it an extra press on both sides. not only just to the piece that you attached, but to all the pieces to be sure that they stay attached.
And you sew them together just like a 4-patch. The quilt is 60 by 60 and it can be a quilt right now. You could just put a binding on it. But if you want it larger, and I want this one to go on a queen, I go to my free handout on mattress sizes and I look up the queen. And with a 15-inch hang, I need a quilt that's 90 by 96. So to calculate how large your side borders must be, you need to take the width of the quilt that you want minus what you have, and that is 30 inches. And then you divide that in half, which is 15 inches. Then you add a 1/2 inch for the seam allowance, and you need 2 side borders, 15.5 inches by 60.5 inches. To calculate the top and the bottom calculation, you do the same thing. So this one, it's 96 minus 60, which is 36. You divide that in half, is 18. You add a 1/2 inch for the seam allowance, and those top and bottom pieces need to be 18.5 inches by 90.5 inches. And if you want to add smaller borders with some trim, you just follow the very same steps in your calculation.
Quilting at this big scale is fun. You have so much space to work with, and you can do all sorts of different textures. For this version of the quilt, I did piano keys on the outside borders. On the inside background, I did ruler work that echoed the points on the compass. In each of the star points, I chose a different design to make each segment different from its neighbor and to add contrast. If there's ever an excuse to do big, thick binding, this is the quilt. My binding here is 1.5 inches, echoing that narrow inner border that I used in the quilt. Now, I showed you how to make thick binding in this video here. It requires, when you're trimming up, to leave an extra 1.5 inches of backing and batting. And the strips that you cut of binding are much thicker. These were cut at 6.5 inches. I love how much it shows off the big block in the middle. I'm sorry, but there's no big reveal for this quilt. It was finished at the 11th hour, and it was picked up in the dark at midnight.
And it now has a new home.
But I do have another one ready to go, and I will share that photo when I have it. You can download my free 30-inch Mariner Star pattern on my website. You can also download my free Quilt Sizes sheet there as well. If you like this video, please consider joining my channel. The button is right there beside the subscribe. We have a wonderful group of quilters, and in our monthly Stitch and Chat sessions, you have the opportunity to share and learn. Take care, and I'll see you next time.